Well, good afternoon again. Thank you for joining us for our webinar, The Value of a Handraiser 2.0. My name is Jen Lennon. I'm a marketing specialist at the Stelter Company, and I'm happy to be here to introduce our speakers. Just quickly before I do, I want to tell you just a little bit about our webinar series. So as an expert advocate for asset-based giving, Stelter is committed to providing innovative solutions and education for the nonprofit industry. And we pride ourselves on being a bridge builder for the community. And as such, we are happy to host this free webinar today, as well as a whole slate of webinars that we host throughout the year, which will hopefully connect you to experts from across the country that will assist you in maximizing revenue across your development portfolio. Today's webinar is the fourth in our 2023 curriculum. We have a terrific lineup this year. We still have Russell James on the schedule, Phil Purcell, Jen Shang with the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy, and Wayne Olson will be up next month, to name just a few. We generally host about one webinar a month, so keep watch on your inbox for your personal invitations, or you can always visit us at stelter.com/webinars and register there. So now back to the presentation today with Brantley Boyett. And we have a last minute change you might notice to our co-presenter. Nathan Stelter had planned to be with us today, but due to some special circumstances, namely he had emergency eye surgery yesterday morning, and he is fine, everything's good, but he just needs to take a little bit of time off. So Zach Christensen, who is our VP of Strategy, Innovation, and Marketing, and also my boss, has graciously agreed to step in. And I know that you're not going to feel cheated because Zach was key in creating this presentation. And he also gave it earlier this year at the Western Regional Plan Giving Conference. So Zach has 20 years of experience in nonprofit marketing. At Stelter, he oversees the strategy, the creative direction, and the execution for a wide range of our clients' marketing campaigns and initiatives. He also leads our design, our editorial, our strategy, and our marketing teams, all with the goal of helping our nonprofit partners drive their donor engagement. Zach is joined today by Brantley Boyett, who is the co-founder and president of Giving Docs, which is the leading provider of a full suite of online estate planning tools. He's a former attorney. He practiced law for over a decade before he founded Giving Docs in 2015. And then in 2017, he partnered with Dan Ariely's Behavioral Science Lab, the Center for Advanced Hindsight at Drake University. Brantley received his JD and BFA in economics at the University of Texas in Austin, and he currently teaches law and entrepreneurship at the Duke University of Law. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed presenters.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you to everyone that has joined us today for the Value of a Handraiser 2.0. Some of you may have seen our presentation last year. If you didn't, not a big deal. We'll be going over, some of those same topics with some updates. I'll go over today's agenda if we can flip to that slide. Thank you, Jen. I'm going to shortly hand it over to Zach to talk about the national standards and how they apply to handraisers. Then I'll be speaking to the value of a handraiser and the handraiser calculator that we've built to help organizations find a monetary value for their handraisers. And then I'll be passing it back to Zach to talk about how we identify, cultivate, and get prospects to raise their hands. One of the mistakes that we made last year in giving this talk was that we didn't define early on what exactly a handraiser is for the purposes of this talk and for the purposes of our calculator. So we define a handraiser as a person who has indicated their intention to leave a planned gift to an organization, but has not yet done so. And that means someone has signaled that they want to leave a planned gift to your organization, but they just haven't gone through with the paperwork, and they're kind of sitting on the sidelines, and they may not intend to do so right away. So many organizations are sitting on hundreds or thousands of handraisers, but they don't often know how this factors into their future revenue pipeline. So in this talk, we're going to argue that organizations can be devoting more resources to growing their handraiser pools, and we will also present a proposed framework for determining the value of those handraisers. This slide goes to the why of this talk a little bit. So some of the things that Zach and I do, survey marketing and online estate planning, as well as many other things, have greatly increased the number of individuals who have indicated an intention to leave a legacy bequest. We also have greater insights into those individuals, better tracking, better data, which means that we should be using these tools to understand what the value is to organizations of this Handraiser pipeline. And with that, I'll pass it over to Zach to talk about Handraisers and national standards.
Thank you, Brantley, and thanks for having me today. Love doing this presentation with you. Let's start off by everyone jumping in the Q&A section, and with a quick show of hands, how many people have actually heard of CGP's National Standards for Gift Planning Success? If you just type in a yes or no into the Q&A session, I think that'll kind of give me a little bit of an idea. So it's kind of crazy. We got yes, no, yes, no, yes, no all the way through. I like it. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with the National Standards for Gift Planning Success, it's a set of 16 standards that have been created and vetted by industry leaders, practitioners, volunteers over the past 6 or so years, officially rolled out in September 2020. In fact, our president, Mr. Nathan Stelter, and I can't tell you how many pirate jokes I tried to think of as a part of this presentation today, but I decided not to put any in there. But Nathan is actually the co-chair of this task force, so he's really tight in with it. The standards have evolved over the past couple of years from a straight metrics initiative to a foundational tool set that provides all charities, regardless of size, sophistication, or structure, a direction and best practice for creating successful plan giving programs. Now, Brantley and I's presentation today, Value of the Handraiser, ties directly into the great work that CGP has been doing with the standards. And it's really all about identifying better ways to articulate to the powers that be the importance of our plan giving programs and the opportunities that each one of us have in front of us today. Now, as you may already know, phase 1 of giving the standards a spotlight to grow is well underway, and the task force has presented at the national conference, given countless webinars and talks like this one, and continues to meet on a regular basis to deepen their relationships with industry experts, vendors, and software companies. Thus far, the National Association has built a strong foundation around best practices in tracking and identifying the right metrics to build a sustainable plan giving program, and that work continues to press forward today. Now, phase 2 really kicked off at the start of this year, and the goal is getting more people to adopt these methodologies and adapt them for their own personal use. The major goal of phase 2 is to build continuity across the board at all organizations so we can start to measure the same sort of measurements and build off the same types of metrics. Now, these standards are all about working smarter and not harder. Sorry, Jen, will you back up one slide? Yep, sorry. Like I said, these standards are all about working smarter and not harder. The creation of these standards really started off with some basic questions and situations that most of us find ourselves in today, or probably throughout your career. Many of you have probably asked or wondered what the difference between a good gift planning program and a great one is. Perhaps you've been asked by your board or your boss why they should be investing in your plan giving program. Or perhaps you've inherited a struggling program and want to give it a jump start. These standards have been developed to help navigate all of these questions, plus many, many more. Now, these standards are intended to be a living, breathing resource based on proven best practices and current research that is focused on providing any and all fundraising shops with the tools to ensure gift planning success. Now you can click, Jen. Now, leave it up to a bunch of marketing people. The GPS and NSGPS is dual meaning there, as there are 3 really main themes that successful programs all have in common that help combat the issues listed off to the right there on this slide. That G is for growing, not stagnant, but ever evolving. Communication internally and externally is really key, as all stakeholders internally should know about what's going on with your program, and all the donors and perspectives in your pipeline, they want to know that your organization is evolving and growing over time. Now, the P is for pipeline focused. Plan giving is not just about gifts identified today. I think we all know that, but equally important is building a pipeline for tomorrow. This is all about the work you're doing today to build awareness, tell the great stories that you have, and create a pipeline that pushes donors and advisors into action. Lastly, the S is for sustained. And I think this is a big one. Commitment internally from leaders within the organization and commitment to delivering donors a consistent experience throughout their journey is paramount. I cannot tell you how many times that I've sat with organizations and had the conversation with people in your very shoes around the investment in their program or the expectations that they should have within their marketing program. This is not something that you do once and all the gifts come in. I think we can all agree that would be great. We could all retire tomorrow if that were the case. But there has to be dedication to this and a steady drumbeat over time, as we never know when donors are going to be in the right mindset to sit down and do their plain giving. Now, as you dive into these, Jen, you can flip the slide. And I'll pop the actual link to the website up here in a minute. But you'll find all 16 standards are organized in 3 major categories: support from the top, ability and capacity to execute, and donor-centric engagement and management. You'll also find a self-assessment for each of these 3 categories on that same page of the standards or of the NCPG website. Now you can take this survey anonymously and not send any of your answers into CGP, or you can choose to submit all your answers to CGP. So over time, they can begin to assess the different stages that all of the planned giving programs are in and measure change over time. Now, one of the most valuable ways that you can use this assessment tool is to ask your manager or your leader to complete the assessment and rate where you are at the same time that you're taking the survey. Now, if the 2 of you come in with the same answers, that's great. You probably have very good communication and a very good partnership with your leaders. But if the 2 sets of answers are different, it creates a great platform for a conversation between you and your leaders and perhaps your board in setting goals for the next year. So the council or the task force recommends taking the assessment at the close of each one of your business years. Again, you can measure progress to your goals over time and set new goals in the areas that need strengthening based on your assessment. So after today's talk, we'll ask the simplest thing you can do is begin with assessment of your program. This assessment is not about metrics. I just want you to remember that. It's all about your program strength and where you're at right now. Here's a QR code. If you pop your phone out really quick, you can take a picture of it, but we'll send it to you as a part of this presentation wrap up as well. And when Brantley and I were sitting down to talk about this, while the ability to assign value to this part of your donor pipeline can impact your program in a wide variety of ways, specifically our presentation today ties into 3 of the key standards, and we'll go through these right now. Number 1 is standard 6, support from the top. The nonprofit has fundraising metrics for individual staff, and programs focus on activities and outcomes that drive success. Valuing Handraiser is an important extension of your pipeline development, in particular, providing another tool for us to visualize to the leadership team and our leaders the opportunities that we have in front of us, and perhaps give us a way to monetize the long tail of a pipeline for plan giving interests amongst our donors. And that's what Brantley is going to talk to us about here in a minute. The next standard is number 8, the ability and capacity to execute. I think this is a big one. The nonprofit prioritizes disciplined, comprehensive donor data management. One of the most critical focuses of the standards is to assist in ultimately providing discipline in how we organize, manage, and share information around the progress of our donors throughout their donor journey. And the last one that this presentation ties to is standard number 9, the ability and capacity to execute. I think this one is a huge portion or a huge standard to look into. The nonprofit has an active prospect management process to keep donor portfolios right-sized and current, and to move donors through the identification, qualification, cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship cycle. I know that's a tongue twister, but it's a good one. By creating ways to track and ultimately monetize our donor pipelines, this can better allow us to build systems and best practices for us to manage our ever-evolving donor portfolios. Now I'm going to hand things off to Brantley, and he's going to actually talk to us about the value of a handraiser and how we can do that. Brantley?
Thanks, Zach, and thanks for that overview of the national standards, and specifically the ones that apply to what I'm about to talk about. What we're about to talk about here is a calculator that was built through research, through talking to a number of industry professionals, through national polling, and I think it's important to tie it back to the national standards so that we understand the why of what we're doing here today. So Jen, if we can go to the next slide. One of the reasons that we started this discussion is we talked to these professionals and we found out that plan gift officers are rewarded for closing. And that means, as many of you know, a plan gift officer generally has a quota for the year of a number of gifts that they need to close in that calendar year, which means that they might be less inclined to engage with someone who just isn't ready right now. Someone who says, yes, I'm interested in learning more, but I'm not doing that this year. Definitely not. And that means that the plan gift officer might disengage or put it on their calendar to talk to them in 3 years, at which point they might not even be there anymore. So if we're talking about this in the view of the standards, forward-thinking leadership can incentivize the growth of this handraiser pipeline if they know what these handraisers are worth. Jen? So something that kept coming up when we were interviewing people was that not all handraisers are created equal, which meaning that there are many different types of handraisers. And it's really important to note that surveying has shown that these people remain valid prospects, even if they've raised their hand and not created a gift for many years. And something that has also come up is that one-size messaging for the donor base doesn't necessarily work when it comes to handraisers. And a typical plan gift officer interaction might not be a good fit either. So if we know what handraisers are worth to the organization, we may be able to fund better systems for handraiser-specific outreach or handraiser-specific gift officers who don't have those same types of quotas that a standard plan gift officer might have. Brief overview of how organizations currently value handraisers. Most still don't. I think many are starting to, and I think our talk is helping people start to realize that this pipeline actually has monetary value. We've interviewed a ton of people over the last 24 months, from executive director to plan gift officer, and many, many consultants. And when we started this, a few had their own systems for valuing handraisers internally. And this discussion has inspired some to begin to do so through our system or for other people to come forward with new systems. So I think that the discussion is important in getting people to start thinking about this. And Nathan and Zach and I make no claim that this is done, that we've solved the problem, so to speak. And you can go to your CFO and explain that you've solved handraisers forever. We're encouraging discussion through this process. So we want your feedback. We want to talk to more people. We want to identify more problems with what we're doing and work to solve these problems together. So one of the terms that we throw around at Giving Docs and at Stelter is gifts under management. So we see this as the pipeline of gifts that an organization is managing, be that plain gifts, handraisers, major gifts. And for the most part, we see gifts under management as unrealized gifts that have real management costs and responsibilities. So we see this kind of as an asset class that is under management, and it has real costs associated with it. So these people need to receive gratitude. They have to have stewardship in order for these gifts to be realized. And many of these people want a personal relationship with the organization until their death. And if these gum aren't properly managed, aren't properly stewarded, then we know that there's going to be a certain level of attrition, that some of these people are going to change their mind and feel like the organization wasn't a big enough part of their life in order for this planned gift to actually realize. Next slide, please. This goes to what I was just talking about. And the point here is that if we don't continue to steward handraisers, the same thing that will happen with your confirmed gifts can happen with your handraiser pipeline as well. Once again, if we're looking at this in terms of valuation, organizations may be improperly incentivizing plan gift officers to continue these relationships with confirmed donors and handraisers. And with quotas in place for each year, we may not be putting the proper quotas in place on stewardship, on relationship maintenance. And this is something really important to think about when we're talking about, this class of assets under management that the organization needs to maintain. Going back to our national standards and why we're trying to impress this upon everyone is that we all know that planned giving is underfunded in general. The amount of money that we spend on planned giving is not proportional to the amount of money that it brings into organizations. And so we have to figure out cases for leadership as to why we should be spending more money on planned giving. And we believe that, valuing handraisers and funding handraiser acquisition is a really great way to show leadership that, hey, the work that we're doing has value that you can't see or that we haven't been able to properly quantify to you before, but that means that you should be funding our programs better. And so what we came up with was a framework for how to understand the monetary value in the handraiser pipeline that is rooted in both scientific and mathematical principles. And disclaimer page, CYA page here, every organization is different donor affinities, different types of engagement, different ages, changing political climates, unplanned events. There's so many things that can throw these types of predictions off. And disclaimer number 2, accurately predicting the future is difficult. So we use past performance as an indicator of future probability, but we can't definitively declare how things will turn out because of all the different variables that are going into this equation. That said, just because we don't have the definitive answer today doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing the work to get towards that answer. So in building out this handraiser calculator, it was important for us to start with a number of assumptions so we could see what the inputs would be into the calculator. So assumption number 1 in building out this calculator was that a certain percentage of handraisers will convert to planned gifts in any given year, and that some of these will be reported and many of these will be unreported. As we know, for a long time, there's a problem in this industry of the gifts coming in being top heavy, unreported. And, a lot of the work that we do and the work that Stelter does is to get people to disclose these gifts before people die, but it will continue to remain an issue. So what we did was interview a number of large organizations about this, and we found that it was a reasonable assumption to say that roughly 3% of a handraiser pool will convert to an actual planned gift in any given year. And of course, this will change greatly from organization to organization, but if the organization's doing all the things they should to steward these people and keep them in the stewardship pipeline, then we will start with that assumption of 3%. Assumption number 2, some of these people will drop out. So a certain percentage of people that have said they want to leave a gift to your organization will change their mind in any given year. And this is opaque to the organization because normally if someone changes their mind about leaving a gift to your organization, they're not going to call you up and tell you about it. They will keep it to themselves and kind of drop out of that pipeline. And generally you just won't know unless it's that rare angry donor that needs to be heard. So for the purposes of this formula, we conservatively assume that about 1% of handraisers will change their mind about their relationship with the organization in any given calendar year. Assumption number 3, the calculator needs an average gift size here. So we did a lot of polling about this and the numbers are all over the place. Many cause-related charities receive an average of 40 to 50K per planned gift that they get in the door. Higher ed skews higher, and we see averages around 100K pretty often. And healthcare organizations can skew even higher, and that may be because of the types of donors that they're going after. One of the organizations from our poll reported that they were over $1 million average planned gift. So for the purposes of this exercise, when we're starting with the calculator, we're just going to put in 100K to start out. But you'll see that you can change that number yourself once you get into the calculator. Another kind of factor in the calculator is life expectancy. So we see here kind of, that we're going to put in 79 as our standard life expectancy age. So that's when we expect any given donor to pass away. We've seen some interesting news lately about how life expectancy might be going up because advances in medical technology. And I even heard a quote recently that said children born today should live to be 100 on average, which is good news for those children and probably horrifying for all the plan gift officers on this call. Next slide, Jen. So if we take those kind of numbers of life expectancy and we know how old a donor is, then we know how long that they will be a hand raiser before either dying, creating a gift, or not giving a gift. And that's an important factor in the calculator. Next slide, please. So once again, how we value gifts now for the most part in this industry is we take the average value of last year's realized planned gifts, the ones that actually came in the door, and apply that number to this year's known gift commitments. Actually, that's a typo. It's the and we'll fix that after the call, Jen. We apply that to the number of this year's known gift commitments. So people that have actually created a planned gift that the organization knows about. And then we put that number in the pipeline of gifts under management for this calendar year, with the associated costs of stewardship and cultivation, and tee them up for the major gifts people. So based on if we look at how we value gifts now and we take the assumptions that we've made, we can create an algebraic equation to determine the value of a hand raiser today at this moment. And we've kind of truncated what that looks like here down at the bottom. It's the years until the gifts realized on average times the annual conversion rate of hand raisers over the years until gifts realized times the annual attrition of hand raisers times the annual gift average, which if you think that's confusing, wait for the next slide, please, Jen. It actually looks like this, which some of you might have had a math minor in college and you might know exactly what this means, but for most of us, it isn't really that helpful. So what we'll do is just skip to the next slide where we've put this into a calculator that you can use and you can pull up right now. And Jen, if you'll go ahead and click on that link for us, we can show you guys what that looks like. So this is a calculator that lives on the Giving Docs website. It is something that we've created for you. It is free. We do not charge for this. We encourage feedback on it. We're not saying, definitively that you can take this to your CFO, but we want you to use it. We want you to play with it. We want you to give us feedback. So we encourage all of you to, pull this link, and it'll be at the end of the presentation as well, a link to this, and, play with these numbers. So Jen, can you just show us what happens if you raise the age from 69 to 71? You'll see that the hand raiser value actually goes up because these people are these gifts are closer to realizing, is a nicer way of saying these people are closer to dying. And then Jen, can you show us what happens if you raise the conversion rate? Because that has a really powerful effect on the valuation there. So that should be incentivizing people to really work on this conversion rate because it increases the value here. And if we play with these numbers, if we raise our average gift amount, of course, that increases it. And then if we raise the attrition rate, it decreases it. If we raise the acquisition cost, it decreases it. As the life expectancy goes up, it decreases the result. So these are the kind of the factors that we should be looking at here. And I know, Zach, you had a recent question from a client who was playing with this.
Yeah, I just had someone I introduced this to someone last week or the week before, and they were talking about, okay, if this is my first time through using the calculator and I have, a group of my hand raisers from last year, and I'd like to talk to my board about the expectancy there or what the value of that pipeline looks like, what do you recommend them doing for that first time? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a one-time thing for somebody in your pipeline rather than trying to assign this to everyone.
That's right, Zach. So the way that this calculation works out, and this is similar to a question that we got at the Western Regional, but slightly different, is this would be a kind of one-time valuation for the overall pipeline. So just as a planned gift that comes in today that is realized is a kind of one-time valuation for your pipeline, this value of your hand raisers is one time. Now, someone may have a pipeline that they built up over 15 years, and they want to dump that valuation into their entire pipeline right now, we feel like that would be appropriate with this calculation. But moving forward, you would just add the new ones each year, each calendar year, to that kind of pipeline valuation, as it were.
I wanted to just step in here for a second and let everyone know that the link to the calculator is in the chat. If you guys want to grab that, you can. And then also, Brantley and Zach, we do have a question that just came in specific to what you're talking about. So I thought we might as well just address it now. It's in your Q&A if you want to look at it, but I'll read it for you. So this person's wondering why don't you just take the 3-year average of realized bequests? And then also, how do you account for outlier gifts that might skew the average? Do you recommend throwing out the largest single gift so it doesn't skew? Or what's your recommendations on that?
So Zach, you may want to speak to this as well, but every organization kind of figures out their average bequest differently. So that's the way that we did it in this assumption is just one way to do it. And a 3-year average is a perfectly normal way to do it. I've heard many arguments for and against taking out the largest gift or taking out the smallest gift. And you could have a whole talk on that subject, but I think it's a little bit organization specific sometimes as to whether or not that's appropriate in how you find out, what your average bequest is. Do you have anything to add there, Zach?
Nope, I think that's good.
So one more thing, I've just been told that because I disabled the chat, I think you guys can see the link, but you can't copy it. So just quickly, it's givingdocs.com/handraiser value, all one word. And we will provide this to you with the slides at the end as well. And what did you say, Brantley?
It's givingdocs.com/handraiser value.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
So we can go to the next slide, Jen. So the great question about the calculator. Once again, we admit that it's not perfect. Some of the things that have come up, one of the questions we're still kind of toying with is, are we using the right number for gift valuation? Should we be using present value future bequest? Should we be using some different type of calculation? We may need another line in here for post-acquisition costs. So we have acquisition costs in the calculator right now, but we don't have, lifetime post-acquisition costs in terms of retaining these hand raisers. And the biggest problem that we have with the calculator is that most organizations just don't have the data that they would need to fill the calculator in. I think we're all trying to do better. That's what the national standards are about. But in plan giving, we still have a lot of catch up to do in relation to our data, across industry. So something that we're all working on at our respective organizations. Next slide, please. I just want to quickly run through the results of a national hand raiser poll that we did over the past 2 years. We had several hundred respondents, and question number 1 was, does your organization track hand raisers in your organizational pipeline? 83% said that they do, which is good. Question 2, how many hand raisers does your organization have in the pipeline? About 50% of organizations polled said 0 to 100, 28% said 100 to 1,000, 11% said 1,000 to 10,000, and about 2% of respondents said 10,000 plus hand raisers in their pipeline. What is the average age of hand raiser at your organization? More than half of all the organizations were unsure or provided a wide range for this number. Of the organizations that did provide an average range, they ranged between 48 and 80, and the average was 69. And then I think the last question is on the next page, Jen.
Oh, I think this was question 4, right?
Oh, sorry, I didn't see it switch. The average bequest size at your organization. So we saw this one really all over the place. So we got as low as 5,000 and over 1 million, as I said earlier. And the average across all, because of those higher numbers, I think skewing it a little bit and self-selecting people with high numbers reporting here. We saw an average of 131,000, but the median at 82.5, which is probably closer to an industry average. And then the final question, and this has changed since last year. Does your organization currently add any value, apply any value to the handraisers in your pipeline? And taking this year's respondents only, we had 29% of organizations ascribing a value to the handraisers in their pipeline, where 68% of organizations don't. And this is an improvement of nearly 15% over last year, but it, also skewed towards people taking this poll who are interested in handraisers and the things that we're talking about. So some of those people may be actually implementing the things that we're talking about now. And the industry average is likely still much lower. So a few takeaways here before I hand it back to Zach. Handraisers have a real value to the organization that is often going unrecognized. Takeaway number 2, how those handraisers are valued will vary greatly from organization to organization. And takeaway number 3, this valuation should be factored into the overall gifts under management of the organization. And fundraisers should be getting credit for this work, and they should be getting funding to build this pipeline. And with that, I'll hand it back to Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Brantley. And I want to address a couple of things that are in the chat there. There's some questions around the values and how they're associated. I think the nice way that this calculator was built is with flexibility. So like Brantley mentioned, depending on how your organization measures things and what numbers make sense for your organization, you can change those within the calculator to get closer to what that truly means for your organization as opposed to everyone else. So good questions though. So yeah, I want to get into, how do we get people to raise their hands? I've got some nice examples to share. First we need to understand when and why they're thinking about these ideas and how we can prompt them into action. So the first thing that we're going to look at is this map that we've created here at Stelter that really talks about the 5 stages of the donor journey. And then under that, we've mapped out the 7 motivations that tie into each one of those different stages. So, up there in that supporting phase, once you've got onto that plan giving mailing list, you've shown RFLA or recency, frequency, longevity of giving. There's probably a certain amount of giving that someone has to show before they fall into your plan giving list. But once they reach that supporting level, we really want to look at those motivations that are tying into it. This work is important to me. This organization is capable. This is kind of where you're starting to educate donors on the various different ways of making a plan gift. You can do that from a conversion standpoint as well. Stelter has we call it our performance marketing platform. That's simple letter packages that convert people in each one of these stages. But the key here is really tying in those donor motivations and seeing where those connect to the different stages of the donor journey. And we kind of map this out in the next slide. It's a fun little trail map to kind of provide us all, a little insight into what kind of goes through that donor's mind as they start in that supporting phase and hopefully reach that phase of actually making a gift and notifying the development director or you. Some people might fall off along the way, and that's totally fine, but truly understanding the behaviors helps to identify opportunities to introduce to donors. What are the offers? What are the different types of marketing messages that we can prepare for them that really get us through those? So in that supporting phase, this is a person that supports your mission. Most likely they've received some thank yous over time, perhaps an impact report that shows the great work that your organization is doing. These types of tactics really deepen that engagement with that person and get them closer to your organization's brand. When we get into that discovering phase, donors are feeling connected to your work. They feel appreciative of the work that you're doing, and they feel appreciated for the thank you that they've provided back to them. This is also a time or a stage where we start to introduce plan giving concepts to them. Hopefully getting into that considering phase where they start to reflect on their financial situation and the plans that they have for the future. This is that phase where they're starting to consider the values that they have and how they align with your organization and the legacy that they would like to leave over time. Now you get some of those deciding stages, where the donor's really starting to integrate that nonprofit with their identity or vice versa. You could probably see some uptick in your plan giving website action or activity. Perhaps you're seeing a donor engage with the reply cards a little bit more. They want a little bit more information on certain types of giving vehicles. But that's the point in time when they're really truly deciding to make that gift. And as much as I wish, marketing could do all that legwork for you, marketing really is there to initiate that initial hand raiser, like what we're talking about. It's not to explain the ins and outs and the details of every single planned gift and, how a CRUT and a CRAD are different and how, a charitable gift annuity works. Marketing is supposed to provide them with that high level understanding of, hey, this is the impact that this type of gift can make, and then move them on to that next step, push them further down the funnel. So when we get to that acting phase, this is probably where you're going to get some people reaching out and wanting to talk to you about the impact that they want to make. And this is a perfect opportunity for you to talk about different giving vehicles once you've understood, what their goals and objectives were. But this is where they're going to start to arrange a gift. And then hopefully, like what we're all trying to do is to get the organizations to notify, or get a donor to notify your organization of a legacy gift. Now, I've got a handful of examples that I'd like to share with you today on how we've kind of done this in the past. The first one is a really simple cover letter package from our friends at the Salvation Army. The team at Stelter put this together, and I think this is so simple, but it's a really nice package that, driving response and getting hand raisers. So that first one, Jen, if you want to back up 1 second, because I want to point this out, that outer envelope, they use a unique handwritten font, and at first glance, this makes it look like it's coming from a human being. It provides a little bit more authenticity for that donor who is getting that in the mail. Once they open it up, again, this is a simple cover letter package. We start by thanking them for their support. We want to show that emotional connection to the donor and, how appreciative you are of the gifts that they've made thus far. In the second paragraph, we move into the offer, and we reinforce that in paragraph 3. Number 4, we really talk about what the offer means to that donor and what advice or what information that it's going to provide them. Number 5, we talk about social proof. People like me have done things like this, and then one of the best practices that I always like to talk about is reinforcing what you want that donor to do in the postscript. So in this, we talk about, return the enclosed reply card for your free gift today. And then the inside, the ride-along card, again, reinforces what the offer is. It gives the donor a little sneak peek at what it actually looks like. People love to see what they're actually going to get. So this is an example of the lesson book. And then on the back here, we provide a little FUD, or industry lingo there, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. What are the things that might happen if you don't have the proper estate plan in place? So we give that little bit of FUD on the end to, just reinforce these are the types of things that we want them to do. And then lastly, your simple remittance envelope or your apply envelope, I always like to, and I know the teams here at Stelter always like to include a person in that left-hand side, attention, in this case, Dane. Again, it reassures that donor that this is going back to somebody and not just to a mailbox at your organization. The next thing here is all about surveys. So surveys are a great tool to understand how your donor is connected to your organization and what parts of their mission really resonate most with them. They also provide a great opportunity for donors to raise their hands and to notify the organization of their intentions, especially their giving intentions. At the very least, they'll provide you, the development professionals, insight into how they're feeling about gift planning and the great opportunities that you might have for follow-up. These are a couple of examples that I wanted to share. The one on the left is a simple, sorry, Jen, back. One on the left is a simple online form that they can fill out. The one on the right is actually one we recently did for Franklin and Marshall. This was, and I want to throw the caveat, don't expect this every time, but Franklin and Marshall sent this out to 500 qualified plan giving prospects. They received over a 25% response rate. They had 104 gift notifications, and 51 of those were new confirmed plan gifts. So obviously, these types of surveys really help spark those hand raisers like Brantley and I have been talking about, but these are two really good examples of how you can do that. Now, the next one is, so this was a great package that we put together for CARE. CARE had done the survey, and it was like, okay, now how do we get them further down the pipeline? So this was a great example of playing that survey back to the donors who filled it out. In the cover letter on the next slide here, we thank them for their time and their effort. We reinforce the mission of CARE, the vision that they have, and the impact that this type of giving has on their organization. It's an excellent way to bring donors closer to your organization's brand and get them thinking about, some of those donor motivations. How can I support this organization? We have similar values and ties. And it's also a great way of showing social proof. So within that, this was like a kind of a 4-page newsletter. We talk about the survey on the first page. And then on the inside, we really highlight all of the different areas that people responded to within the survey. So again, this is social proof. It reinforces people like me are doing things like this. And as an added bonus to this, again, we want to try to further that plan giving conversation. We have an offer here for a digital estate planning kit, as well as, giving them an opportunity to raise their hand here and let them know that, hey, I have done this type of gift and I want you to know about it. And I'd love to join the Legacy Society. The next is just a simple picture of the brochure, the digital brochure and the digital guide. So you can click through to those, Jen. But again, great ways of pushing people further down that plan giving funnel. And if you've gone to some of our presentations before, this is an oldie but a goodie, the next couple are. But this was a great little self-mailer that we did for San Francisco Symphony. Michael Tilson Thomas, the orchestra director, was celebrating his 70th birthday. So we did a 70 at 70 challenge kind of campaign for them. This still stands as one of their most highly successful pieces that we've done for them. They put I joke that they put a little frosting on this one in the little flip panel there at the bottom. If you were to raise your hand, you were entered into a drawing to win 2 seats to a special concert and dinner at the organization. So it's cheating a little bit, but I think it was a great opportunity to show that, through this person, here's a campaign or here's a challenge that we're going to put forth in everyone. And then the next one is the reply card here. You can see that, yes, I'd like to add this gift in my will. There's also an offer there. Really, my only knock on this package is I would love to see a picture of that brochure just to show the donor what they're going to be getting. And the last one here, and this is from Adelphi University. I think this is a great package. It comes in like a little A7 envelope style mailing, really nice envelope. But this cover letter is from Dr. Scott, who is actually retiring. He's a longtime president of the organization. And he's laying out kind of the nostalgia of, the history of him being there and the passion and the connection that he has to this organization. In fact, that he's leaving a planned gift to the organization and he's inviting others to do the same. So again, this is a really nice kind of invitation style tactic to get people to raise their hands. So in summary of all of this, I think the biggest thing that we can think about here is giving your donors and your prospects different options to reply. No one channel is going to probably, be it for everyone. We've noticed that a lot of folks are doing print or they're responding to print, then they'll go to digital or vice versa. So we just want to make sure that we're there when they're ready to make that decision. And we want to stay front of mind for these types of things. So again, basic things here. We want to understand where our donors are at in the journey. We want to try to be as creative as possible when we're pushing out, direct mail to them, direct marketing in any way. And then lastly there, we want to make sure that we're providing plenty of options for our donors to respond to us. So with that, I think we can open it up to questions. I know we have a few minutes left here.
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes left and we do have some questions that have come in. So I think first and foremost, if we can just have you guys give the definition of when you say handraiser, Brantley, in your portion, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this is on one of the earlier slides in the presentation, which you're all going to get. But the way that we define a handraiser for the purpose of this discussion is an individual who has indicated an intent to leave a planned gift to the organization, but has not yet done so, meaning they have not finalized that gift. So that is how we define hand raisers for this discussion.
Okay, and here's I think a pretty technical question. Do they understand correctly that the p-value that is included with the formula measures the spread of the data? Is it a standard practice to calculate standard deviations to determine what the outliers are? Hopefully that makes sense to you.
Sort of, and I'd be interested to engage this attendee offline for more discussion about this, but we don't currently calculate standard deviations to determine what the outliers are. And it's a great question about standard practice, because this, as of right now, hand raiser valuation is not a standard. So this is kind of uncharted territory, and we're figuring out, what the right inputs are, and whether this, I think this calculator will continue to evolve. Someone asked us last year, how long until we can start proposing this as a national standard? How much input do we need? And I said, it'll probably be an ongoing thing forever, but we would probably feel more comfortable about how we're doing this calculation after 3 years of work.
Okay,
well,
so
I think Kat brings up an interesting thing in the Q&A too. Instead of intent, could you say interest in making a planned gift? Because I think that's kind of what it is, right? The calculator is essentially saying, hey, I've got these people that have shown interest one way or another through, the marketing that we've done, or, the RFLA, the recency, frequency, monetary value, like I mentioned before. But really, this is kind of like looking at your pipeline. If we could put a monetary value on the value of everything that's here, all the people that have shown interest, this is kind of where we're at. Is that how you kind of look at it, Brantley?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you could slice this, but we've used the word intent, and it could be interchangeable with interest, but those mean different things to different people. And that's part of the problem is we try to tie this down to what could potentially be a national standard. Are we all in agreement on the use of these terms? And is this what makes the most sense in creating this calculation?
So I think that gets back to, we have another question, and a couple of people have upvoted it. It's just a little confusion on the definition. And are they supposed to be looking at people that have told you that they have put you in their estate plan, but you don't know the amount? Do you count them as a hand raiser, or you take those people out and you're just focusing on people that have expressed interest, but they haven't actually said, yes, you're in my estate plan?
Well, that varies from organization to organization. A lot of organizations want to see the actual document and know the amount. Some people might be able to meet their quota by just having a donor put something in writing that says, you're in my estate plan. I don't want to tell you the amount right now. But generally, I would think of those people who have come forward and said, you're in my estate plan, as in the confirmed gift pipeline, as opposed to the hand raiser pipeline.
I think that makes sense. Okay, so one last question. If anyone else has questions, we do still have a few minutes. So is the thought behind the hand raiser valuation to use it to show as an additional metric that needs to be achieved in any given fiscal year? And if so, how do you reconcile with leadership when compared to an actual dollar amount in the door, while also comparing planned gifts that have been documented or other more traditional ways to measure value like PV?
So the first question here is, should it be an additional metric that needs to be achieved? So I think our intent here was not to give people more work, but instead to quantify and celebrate the work that they're already doing right now. So you would have kind of a different line item for hand raisers. Yes, leadership would always wants to know about money in the door. They want to know about planned gifts that have been documented. And I think you're already doing this work, right? And hand raisers are naturally part of your planned giving pipeline towards confirmed gifts. So I think it's a way to actually quantify and celebrate the work that you're doing rather than saying, okay, we have to get this many in any given year. Although that it may be one of the unintended consequences of bringing this valuation into the equation, is that leadership says, yeah, these are worth something, and we should be getting a certain number of these each year.
Right. And I think this question maybe kind of goes to marketing, Zach. We have someone wondering that when you're prospecting for hand raisers, do you think it's better to make being a hand raiser easier? So you're going for a volume of hand raisers versus having fewer by making them say like, yes, I am considering.
I think that's a great question. I think that goes back to standard number 8 when we talked about the ability and capacity to execute. If your organization has, the ability to execute at a high level, let's say you have 3, 4, 5 development officers, sure, make it as easy as possible for people to respond. But if you're a single person shop, and I know we work with a lot of organizations that just have one person, we're trying to look for more qualified leads. So it may not be, a simple brochure. We may make the piece a little bit more complicated because we want to further qualify that person. But at the end of the day, it really depends on the size and the scope of your organization and your ability to follow up with those leads. Because the last thing you want to do is create a bunch of leads and no one able to follow up with them. I know that's something like our strategist team always is looking at, is like the size of mailing list that people have, and then asking about, okay, how many people do you have? Like, so for survey, for instance, in that Franklin and Marshall, when we have 104 people responding to that as like, hey, these are new gift intentions or gift notifications, we want to make sure that those organizations have the capacity to follow up in a timely manner, so we don't, anger those donors. Because if they're going to spend the time and they're going to be willing to sit down and, take a 5-10 minute survey, put it in the mail, respond, we want to make sure that we can get back to them as soon as possible.
Absolutely. We have one question left. I don't think you guys are going to really have an answer, but I'm going to throw it out there just as something that they're interested in knowing. Do you know, you just talked about how some nonprofits require some sort of a document that documents, they don't just accept that you say, yes, I've put you in my will. They require a document. Is that common for nonprofits, or do most go on the honor system?
This is something that we haven't scientifically polled over here yet. So, mostly the evidence that we have is anecdotes from people at organizations. I don't know if you have a better answer for that, Zach.
I don't. I think this is one of those things that varies from organization to organization on their gift acceptance policies and like what actually constitutes a gift in the door today. Like, realized gifts are one thing, hey, the person passed, the money is in your hands. But I think, it's difficult on, judging like, okay, you got to prove, the proof's in the pudding. I've got, you got a blood oath on this type of thing. Like, I don't see a lot of organizations do that. I think there is a little bit more that kind of, go on the honor system, but I think it should be something that the next go round, Brantley, for us, that might be a question that we include.
Sure.
Absolutely.
We are out of time, guys. So I did want to just let people know that if you do have questions, come up with questions later when you're reviewing this again, you can reach out to any of us. There is the email addresses on the screen, brantley@givemedocs.com. You can reach out to Nathan, even though he's not here. You can reach out to Zach, myself. If you're interested in Stelter and getting to know what we do, visit us at stelter.com. And then lastly, the resources from today's webinar, we did record it. We have the handouts. We have there's your link for the calculator page. And then also if you're interested in registering for the rest of our webinars, you can go to our webinars page. So that's what we have for today. Thank you so much, Brantley, for being here with us for the last hour, and Zach for stepping in for Nathan. Really appreciate it. And to everyone who was on the call today, I think we had about 230 people with us sharing the last hour. Thank you so much. And we hope to see you again next month. And we hope you have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.